All Tomorrows, a billion-year chronicle of the myriad species and mixed fortunes of man, by C. M. Kosemen. A reading, Part 4. Hedonists. Even the blissful existence of the fingerfishers would have seemed bothersome to the hedonists, for their kind was not evolved, but designed for a life of pleasure. The queue had kept them as pampered pets, set loose in a tropical island world of succulent fruits, bountiful trees, and calm, lapping lakes full of sweet, bacterial manna. Furthermore, the hedonists were left as the only animal life on this place. They had no choice but to enjoy it to the fullest. In normal conditions, any given species would quickly crowd out such a utopian environment. But normal conditions had never been the point of the queue redesign. They had altered their subjects so that they could conceive only after mating an enormous number of potential suitors, continually over a period of decades. While this took care of the population problem, it also made the species less adaptable. Without any point in sexual competition, natural selection would progress only at a glacial pace. Fortunately, their stable microcosm remained free of environmental catastrophes even after the queue left. All these changes had also made the hedonists' day. Their lives were juxtaposed routines of browsing, sleeping, and mind-blowing sex, troubled neither by the concerns of disease or pregnancy. Aloof and carefree, they enjoyed the most pleasurable times of all mankind, albeit with the intellectual capabilities of 3-year-olds. It didn't really matter though. Who needed to think when having such a nice time, after all? Insectophagi. Nondescript, quaint human species abounded in the post-Q galaxy. Hundreds of them lived out simple, unnoticed lives, never developing to become sentient, never learning their true heritage as star-born human beings. Most of them went extinct, not to be missed or even remembered. Those that lingered on managed to survive in shady, quiet niches, never again making any impact on the celestial scheme of things. One such species was the Insectophagi. They had quietly adapted themselves for a diet of colonial insects and small animals. They had faces covered with leathery plates, claw-like hands to dig out prey, and worm-like tongues to scoop them up. All in all, they weren't special in any particular way, but a combination of galactic invasions, coincidence, and pure luck would make them the longest enduring of all starmen. The meek would inherit the cosmos, though not just yet. For now, the Insectophagi were concerned only with the location of insect colonies and the onset of the mating season. Spacers. It must be remembered that the Star People did not succumb entirely to the Q invasions. While their worlds fell away one by one, some Star People took refuge in the void of space. One after another, entire communities scrambled into generation ships and cast themselves off into the darkness, hoping to go unnoticed by the beings that had overrun their galaxy. Desperate times made for desperate measures. As the Starmen had observed during their initial colonization of the galaxy, life in generation ships inevitably led to mass insanity and anarchy. This time, however, humans had to adapt themselves, or face extinction. Entire asteroid fields were confiscated and hollowed out to make spaceships of unseen size. These hollow shells cradled bubbles of precious air and water, but no artificial gravity of any kind. It was discovered that a purely ethereal existence would ease the stress of interstellar exile, provided that its inhabitants were adapted for life inside such an environment. Furthermore, people were forced to change themselves. In an atmospherically sealed, gravity-free environment, their bones were left free to grow longer, thinner, spindlier. The circulatory and digestive systems were pressurized to avoid heart problems and congestion. The latter change had another advantageous side effect. Humans could navigate through the void with jets of air expelled from modified anuses. Such experiments were numerous and usually plagued with failure, yet they did succeed in creating a future. Sealed tight in their moon-sized, air-filled, weightless havens, the descendants of the Star People managed to evade the scourge of the Q. It was an endless diaspora. Even after the Q left, they would find themselves too divergent to have anything to do with their ancestral lifestyles. The survivors of the initial hurdle would never set foot on a planet again. Ruin Haunters. A particular human species, singled out by its lucky access to the heritage of its stellar ancestors, would eventually get to play a leading role in the shape of things to come. They had gotten through the Q invasion with relatively little degradation. Yes, they had been reduced to the level of apes, but their recovery had been quick. Apparently, the Q had not worked as hard at suppressing their intelligence. Nor had they made a comparable effort to wipe away the material traces of the Starmen. Even after millions of years, enormous ruins of the global urban spaces littered the continents of their world. Thus did the Ruin Haunters earn their names. With developed minds and unrestricted access to the wisdom of the ancient cities, the exponential pace of their development was only natural. One by one they deciphered and built upon the secrets of the bygone Star People until they almost equaled their galactic ancestors in wisdom and skill. All of this development happened in an unnaturally short period of time, and sometimes the old technologies were not even understood as they were blindly replicated. Needless to say, such a pace of development put premature stresses on the social and political structures of the Ruin Haunters. They barely survived the 5 consecutive world wars that raked their planet, 2 of which were thermonuclear exchanges. They made it through. Their baptism with fire had hardened and awakened them. The wars united them politically and pushed their technological capabilities even beyond the level of the Star People. Coincidentally, they also developed a dangerous form of autochthonous madness. The Ruin Haunters had come to believe that they were the sole descendants and the true heirs of the Star People, and they were ready and willing to do anything in order to claim their fictitious, bygone golden age. Sentience Reborn. If any sort of periodical arrangement can be brought to the history of mankind, the post-Q era of emerging human animals can be likened to a series of millennial dark ages. However, like any Dark Age situation, these periods of silence had finite lifespans. One by one, like stars emerging from the fog, new civilizations were born out of the shattered remnants of mankind. In some rare cases, the recovery was swift and straightforward. In most other situations, it came only after a lengthy series of adaptive radiations, extinctions, and secondary diversifications. Within these lines of descent, there was as much distance between the initial post-humans and their intelligent descendants as between the first Cretaceous fuzzballs and Homo sapiens. Sooner or later, human intelligence returned to the cosmos. But except from their shared ancestry, these new people had nothing in common with people of today, or even each other. Extinction. Not all human animals made it through. In fact, it must be realized that the majority of post-Q humans died out during the eras of transition. Extinction, the utter and absolute death of an entire family, entire community, entire species, was rampant in the galaxy. There was nothing cruel or dramatic in all of this. Extinction was as common and as natural as speciation. Sometimes a species simply failed to adapt to competition or the abrupt change of conditions. In other occasions, their numbers dwindled across imperceptible gulfs of time. This way or the other, human animals faded out. In all of this death, however, there was a new life. As one species vacated a certain niche, others would soon step in to take its place. Adaptive radiations would follow, filling in the blanks with myriads of diverse and varied forms. Despite the fallen, the flow of life would proceed, blazing in constant turnover. Snake People, descendants of the worms. The scorching sun eventually cooled down, and life flooded back to the surface from her subterranean stronghold. As animals of all kinds exploded into the terrestrial niches that had been left vacant for millennia, so did the descendants of the worms. On the surface, they found new opportunities as entire assemblages of serpentine grazers, swimmers, predators, and people. One form, descended from tree-climbing mammalian snakes, revolved the human intelligence that had lain dormant for so long. They observed, contemplated, and philosophized with novel, spirally coiled brains and handled the world with a singular pelvic hand, born out from the remnants of their ancestors' feet. They looked nothing at all like their distant human ancestors, but their social development followed a similar path. Several agricultural world empires, followed by industrial revolutions, social experiments, world wars, civil wars, and globalization. But then again, socio-political parallelism in history did not necessarily imply a similar or even recognizably human world. Modern cities of the global snake world were tangles of pipe-like roads, branching, three-dimensional railroads, and windowless, hole-like buildings. Though their knotted architecture differed from region to region, these settlements generally looked like kilometre-wide balls of glass, metal, plastic, and cloth, wrapped so tightly that a human of today would find it impossible to move inside them. Plazas and open areas were totally absent, as they presented navigational obstacles and areas of insecurity. Their evolutionary background in the trees had made the snake people into borderline agrophobes. None of these, of course, was unusual to the snakes in any way. Their relatively alien lifestyle was as particular to them as ours is to us. All across their world, the arterial cities throbbed with people, each with their own joys, sorrows, and chores, living out lives as human as any other intelligent beings.